Hi guys, I just wanted to run through the plate boundaries and earth land features sheet that we did in class today. For those of you guys who may have missed it, or those of you who just want a refresher and maybe missed a few parts, you can follow along with me, stop when you need to, and hopefully you can get all this information. We'll be talking about these boundaries, looking at them on maps, talking about their movements and the landforms that they create. So this is a really good document for you to reference. The first row talks about continent-continent or ocean-ocean boundaries. So I just kind of combine them together by putting either continent-continent or ocean-ocean. And this type of boundary, as you can see, they're moving apart. So for this motion at the boundary, it's moving apart or away. And for this boundary type, this is a divergent boundary. Remember in the affixes that we've been working on, that die means to split. These plates are splitting apart. And this verge means the edge. So at the edge where these two plates meet, they're moving apart. Some common land features we might find around a divergent boundary include a rift valley. And then if we've got an ocean-ocean plate, we might see a mid-ocean ridge. Now there's lots of examples here on the surface of the earth. Madagascar was definitely a rift valley at one time when it separated from the southern part of Africa. The Arabian Peninsula has moved apart and separated, creating that Red Sea. And then even today, the Horn of Africa is pulling away, and we see a lot of volcanoes on that eastern side of Africa. And then finally, what separated Africa from South America, this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This is still spreading today and pushing those two plates further apart. This second diagram shows us two ocean plates coming together. And so they are moving together. And you'll notice one appears to be going underneath. We call this subduction. Again, going back to our affixes that we've been learning, we've got this sub, means beneath. So this oceanic plate is going to go under. And think about for just a moment what might happen to that plate as it goes back into the mantle of the earth. Going to melt, and then it's going to get recycled and come back up, maybe at another surface, maybe at a rift valley somewhere. And so we kind of have this, we do have this recycling. We have crust being destroyed and we have crust being formed. And this is a convergent boundary. Again, going back to our affixes, con means with or together, and verge, so here along the edge, these two are coming together. We've also got this special little extra deep spot. This is called a trench. So one of our major land features that we're going to see is a trench. Specific to ocean-ocean boundaries, you'll notice this plate gets subducted and magma begins to melt and it's less dense, so it's going to rise up, and we eventually see some volcanic islands there. That's my attempt at a volcano. So we'll have a volcanic island arc. This includes places like the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska, other places like parts of Asia, Japan, the Philippines are also formed when one plate gets subducted beneath another. We've got another kind of convergent boundary. Here we've got an oceanic plate and a continental plate. And you'll notice it looks similar. We still have a plate that goes under, and it's the oceanic plate that always goes under because it's more dense. And this, just like dense things sink, dense oceanic plate is going to sink back down into the mantle. But you'll notice we still have a convergent boundary. So these are coming together. And so again, that ocean is going under. So even with a continental oceanic boundary, we still have subduction. And it's, of course, a convergent boundary. Well, since this plate is getting pushed under, you'll notice there's a low spot here. So we still have trenches. One of the things I mentioned in class, I asked for all of my Godzilla fans. Now, the Mariana Trench is considered the deepest place on the surface of the Earth. And the story goes that that's where Godzilla is from. But that trench was formed by the Pacific Plate running into the continental plate of Eurasia. And so along that, including much of the Japan islands, we've got volcanic mountain ranges. This would also include the Andes Mountains in South America. They run the whole length of South America. It's the longest continuous mountain range on land. And it's formed by the Pacific Plate colliding with the South American Plate. We've got one final example of a continent-continent collision. So this convergent boundary is, of course, also moving together. And this is going to form mountain ranges. So places like the Himalayas, the Ural Mountains, the Rockies and Appalachians, all of these formed by a collision between two continental plates. We've got one final type of plate boundary, and this is a bird's eye view, not a side view like the previous diagrams. This one is taken from above. It's an aerial photograph, essentially. And this is a transform boundary. These plates are sliding past each other. Just like when you walk past friends in the hallway, you're going in opposite directions. It's the same thing with a transform boundary. And so these are sliding past each other. We see earthquakes anytime these plates move. Anytime these plates are moving, they can release some energy from that built-up stress, and they can release earthquakes. But common with transform boundaries are these shallow earthquakes. They're not very deep. And most relevant example, I think, to most of us living here in the States is the San Andreas Fault. So even though they made a movie based on the San Andreas Fault, it is a real place that exists, and it is a transform boundary. We would probably have to evaluate if some of those were realistic things that happened in there. We have one final type of boundary. You can see here, this is a bird's eye view. It's not the side view like we have in the previous diagrams. This is a bird's eye view, and this is a transform boundary. Just like when you walk past your friends going in opposite directions in the hallway, this type of plate boundary, the plates are sliding past each other. And this is known as a transform boundary. Remember, trans means across, and so they're sliding past each other, and they just keep on going. Common at transform boundaries are shallow earthquakes, keep in mind, anytime these plates are moving, they're going to release some energy and that's stress and cause earthquakes. But for the most part, the only thing we really see at a transform boundary are going to be these earthquakes. But keep in mind, we could see earthquakes anytime these plates are moving around. For us here in the States, the most common example would be the San Andreas Fault. Well, I hope that helps you out. Make sure you take a look at this periodically. It's not very often we use these vocab words like transform and congruent